Jono Ridler, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Thanks, fellas. It's good to be here.
Very excited to have you on in the Export Beer Garden studio. Been a bit of a week, Jono.
Yeah, it has been.
Bit of a week.
Understatement of the year.
Had a bit on. So today, timestamping this, Auckland was declared a state of emergency due to the heavy rain and flooding, and we were worried we might not be able to get you into the studio. So Shay, old mate Shay over there, thinks he's a bit of a gags man. Was like, oh, Jono could just swim over.
That's not what I sound like. That's not what I sound like or how I deliver it.
And then I heard someone else make the same gag as we were preparing. It's like, oh, I guess Jono could just swim. Have you heard that a lot today?
Oh, not today, but previously in reference to other, maybe flooding events or similar. Yeah, old gag.
Ah, shit.
Sorry, mate.
No, that's okay. Look, a lot of my material gets recycled.
Yeah, Jono will be all right. He can just swim. Anyway, tell us about the week, man. Like, you completed 5 days ago. You completed this epic swim, breaking the record for an ultramarathon swim in New Zealand. 99 kilometres. Is it 99? Is it
0.1?
Are we pushing that up to 100?
That's the unofficial distance.
Yeah.
But the official distance will be based on a straight line course. So while I...
That's a long ruler, by the way, whoever's got to do that job. Whoever's got to do that job.
So I think it'll be about 95 is the straight line. So there was a little bit of...
Genuine question. How do they do the straight line? Is it like point A of land to point B of land?
Yeah, like latitude, longitude from start point to end point, and we had a couple of landmarkers in the way. So, the likes of Little Barrier, and those are considered enforceable as part of the course. So they kind of count towards it rather than it being, direct route from Karaka Bay through to Campbell's Bay. It's the shortest distance between those points, including Little Barrier.
Right. It's a shitload of, it's a long, long way.
Yeah.
And I feel like my sense of distances, after doing my research, are just way off. Like what's the bay swim? I was like, is it 2.8 or 3K? From
across the harbour?
Yeah.
Back when that was running, it was 2.8.
Yeah, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, that's about 20K, easy. And I'm thinking, fuck, like 99 is a long, long way if that is only 2.8. It's a shit ton of swimming to do.
Yeah, it's a pretty far way.
I've heard you do a few interviews in the last few days. So you finished the swim on Thursday. Now we're 5 days later. In those interviews, you said the emotion of what you'd accomplished hadn't really kicked in yet. Is it any different now?
Still hasn't really. Yeah, still hasn't really hit home. And, you go through this massive roller coaster in the lead up where you're training hard. You probably have a bit of self-doubt. There's like peaks and valleys as you're going through the training before you even get to, starting the thing. And then all of a sudden you do it. And for me, it's been pretty crazy over the last few days because there's been a lot of public exposure and people have been really interested in it, and I haven't really been able to catch a breath in a way. So no, I haven't really fully reflected and debriefed with myself after the swim, and I haven't really had any kind of emotional onslaught that I might have thought that I would have.
Yeah, which is interesting because you're an incredibly insightful guy, and we're going to get into it. But I heard you say in the lead up that you were emotional and cried at times with gratitude for the opportunity of the swim. Is that right?
Yeah, I do a lot of visualization. And so I'd just be thinking about the swim, like particularly the finish. That's obviously a good part of the swim. And I would literally be crying because it would just make me so emotional thinking about that moment. And this was not doing it. This was like weeks and weeks before, and yeah, it would really get the tears going.
Did the actual emotion of finishing it match the visualization element that you had?
No. I knew it was going to be a little bit different. Like when I actually finished it, it was massive relief, and then eventually pride. But at that point, I was in pretty significant amounts of pain. And just happy to stop moving my arms, really.
Yeah, how is the bod?
Good. Now, yeah, I've got a few niggles here and there, but yeah, I definitely feel like a human again. It's a weird thing in a sense. Like I'm almost sad that the pain is leaving in a way, because that's like the last physical manifestation of the swim. Otherwise, it just becomes a bit of a dream, like it's a memory from here. And obviously we've got like the videos and photos to remember that it happened, but the experience leaves really quickly, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it 2 days in hospital that was pre-planned after the race?
I wasn't pre-planned. The ambo at the end was pre-planned. So I always knew that we were going to get into the ambulance at the end, and I thought I'd just get, checked off and then go back home off the back of that and have a sleep in my own bed. But there was enough to kind of say, you should be going into the hospital, and it was only one night. So I spent the night there and got pumped full of fluid, and then discharged at about 2:30 the next day.
Was there anyone's responsibility to have a dry set of clothes in that ambulance?
You know what? I talked about this with Sarah, my wife, after the fact, and she said, we have to sort that out next time because no, we didn't. And I ended up using some of my dad's clothes in hospital because I didn't have anything. I just went to the hospital in togs and I still had sand on my feet.
Gordy, right? Gordy,
Yeah.
your dad?
Gordon, yeah. Gordy.
Gordy, yeah. Dropped his jeans for you. I've got it on good authority. Like, willing to drop his pants and just rock to the hospital in his undies for his son.
He did that. That's right.
What a guy.
I feel like if you see your son swim 99 kilometres, yeah, you're dropping pants.
Yeah, that's the least. That's probably the least that you're going to do. But yeah, I like it. Those little parts, and we'll get into kind of the logistics and preparation, but those are all the parts that Joe Bloggs doesn't see. They just go, wow, that's amazing that he swum all of those kilometres, let alone the pieces of the puzzle that have to be in place to allow you to even achieve that, which is incredible. Really, really incredible. Looking forward to delving into that detail.
Personal anecdote, I was trying to play golf today on a day that a state of emergency was declared.
Jono, you would be amazed how many times this man brings this podcast into his golf space.
Real smart move. We were out at Muriwai, no one else out there, so we had a couple of coffees and called it a day. But anyway, when we were discussing who had coming up on the podcast, I said Jono Ridler. 3 of them all knew you. All different, very different walks of life. They were all buzzing that you were coming on the podcast. And I kind of wanted you to reflect on what the last 5 days have been like, because it seems like the media exposure and the narrative has really captured the imagination of Kiwis. I feel like the story was everywhere, and everyone I've talked to knows about it at least. Do you feel like this thing blew up bigger than you could have imagined?
Yeah, it's just been weird, completely unreal. We were trying to churn up a bit of public attention, obviously, to bring attention to the state of the Hauraki Gulf, but the levels at which it has gone to has just been completely beyond anything that I thought we would see, and to the extent that, like you say, people that had no interest in swimming or no interest in the Hauraki Gulf, all of a sudden they were watching this little red dot go down the map. And yes, it's still really hard for me to get to terms with. In my head, it's just weird.
But that was. Oh,
do you have any theories about why it's resonated so strongly with people?
I think that people like to see other people doing things that seem not impossible. I think impossible is the wrong word, but just kind of beyond comprehension in a way. So I think there's that element of it. And then people do really care about our country and the land and the oceans. And so I think the combination of those two things did pull people together. But I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to think, why you think people would have been captivated by it.
Steve?
Yeah, I think the first reason, it seems like an impossible task. I think people know how hard it is to swim. If you're not a swimmer, to swim 50 metres, you're exhausted after it. To think about doing a 10K open water or something is just like the hardest thing ever. So I think people know how monotonous and boring and painful long swimming can be, and to get inside the mind of someone that's done it for 100 kilometres is just I've got so many questions I want to ask about how you did that mentally. I just think that mental toughness is just the most appealing thing to me. Shay?
Yeah, I think I probably approach it a little bit from the natural environment perspective, where you know deep down in your heart that we should be doing better things. I've got a bit of a different lens to Stephen in that my mum comes from a Pacific island, the Solomon Islands. My sister is really involved in traditional waka and ocean navigation. So the importance of oceans is something that's on my periphery, but I don't claim to have any real intimate knowledge of it. It's just something that's in the horizon. And then to Stephen's point, when someone like yourself does an incredible feat, you go, wow, that's amazing. And then when you realize the cause behind it, you go, wow, I should actually do and know more about this. And why does it take an extraordinary feat to bring that back into the lens? And I was kind of mortified with myself, thinking how much I enjoy kai moana and scallops and crayfish, and then to in the research to learn that it's almost virtually extinct in the Hauraki Gulf. Those things, it's like, shit, sustainable fishing and all of those parts that you hear talked about in political circles, they have a genuine, a real impact on something so close to a lot of people. We don't live in Auckland, we live in Hamilton. But I think it's just all of those little pieces of the puzzle to go, I do know better and I should know better and we should be advocating for some of these things. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Good answers. Okay, so I want you to take us back to the start, and I'm a details guy, so I'm going to provide some detail here. Okay, so in 2019, you swim the Cook Strait, takes you 6 hours, 22 minutes. Then in 2020, you do Lake Taupo, 12 hours, 22 minutes. In 2021, you do the Fovo Strait, 7 hours, 52 minutes. Then in 2022, you have a postponed double crossing of the Cook Strait, which meant a backup return swim to Paul Knight's Island from Matapori Beach, which took you 13 hours and 20 minutes and was 45 kilometres. Fast forward to this year, where you decide to double that distance. You've doubled the distance of your longest swim. So can you take us back to that decision making of like why you took on this impossible task?
I first had the idea for swimming from Great Barrier back to Auckland back in 2019, so it's something that's been sitting there for a little while. I just didn't really do anything with it. I did want to, Cook Strait was always the first big goal for me, and there was never any intention to do anything beyond that, but naturally it kind of just evolved into taking on Lake Taupo, and then off the back of that, Fovo Strait as well, and those three swims collectively are the New Zealand Triple Crown of open water swimming. And then, like you say, last year doing Matapuri to the Poor Knights and back. So in the background, I always had in my mind that I wanted to do this swim from Great Barrier back to Auckland. I've got a connection to Great Barrier Island, and it hasn't been, that swim hadn't been done before. It seemed pretty alluring to me to be able to adventure and be the first person to do that route. And then last year, I was like, okay, well, now I'm actually going to be building up towards this. I don't have any other goals. It's time to get a little bit more serious with it, and started thinking about it. And I can't remember exactly how the thought of building it up to 100K came into it. It was just, it seemed like this almost again, the word impossible, but this massive target that I wanted to build towards, because it was something that scared me. So I've always tried to lean into, with these swims, things that, scare me a little bit, like going back to Lake Taupo. Can I actually do that distance? Fovo Strait, can I swim in that cold temperature? And Double of Cook, can I do that? Because that's hardly been done at all. And so 100Ks, it was like, this it's a long way. Is that something that I can actually do? And yeah, it kind of just came about from that, I think, and yeah, massive jump up from what I had done in the past, but I had a pretty strong self-belief that I could get there.
Is it a case of verbalizing it to make the state? How did you announce you were going to? Did you tell someone I'm going to do it, and then did that solidify that you were going to do it?
I think I wrote about it first, in my journal, and then I think I might have told Sarah, my wife, just run it past her.
What was her reaction?
Jeez, I can't remember.
On your Jono.
Yeah. She's always been pretty supportive though, and she kind of gets it now. She's seen the journey over the last 4 or 5 years, and she knows how much it means to me as a person and how much it's influenced my journey and evolution as well. So I think she's always just backed it, and I'm probably the one that has more, like, voices more of the doubts at times. I could be like, Sarah, like 100 Ks is a long way. And she's like, no, you can do it. Like, just you know you can do it. So yeah, she's a really good sounding board for that kind of stuff. And then I started talking to Live Ocean about it as well. So we had to start committing to that. And I think that's when it started getting a bit more real. It was really under wraps for a long time. I didn't want to tell anybody really like what I was training for, but just told like a small inner circle. And then beginning of April, it went.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that Live Ocean connection and how that piece comes into the swim itself?
Yeah. So going back to last year and when I was looking at doing this swim, I really did want to make it something that was bigger than me, something that was more meaningful, that would draw attention to something other than myself, and really using that as a platform. And I had seen the work that Live Ocean was doing and really liked it. Like, I've spent a lot of time in the water swimming, and so I have been able to see firsthand the degradation of our oceans, and specifically the Hauraki Gulf. I guess we can go into that in a little bit more detail later, but I targeted Live Ocean through one of my mates, Olaf, and he was able to set up that connection, and they were they were fully behind it. It was something that was a bit unique to them, but they really liked the idea of what I kind of had envisioned, and then they took it to the next level in terms of the public engagement and getting that exposure.
I actually spoke to Olaf in preparation for this.
Oh, did you?
And I asked him, what's Jono like? And he said, I don't even know Jono outside of swimming. And it's amazing kind of element to this journey that, and we'll get into that. It was just the point I wanted to make now, is that the swimming community is a really interesting community, right? Because I imagine you spend a lot of your time in the water, and then you don't have a lot of time to kind of chat on land, right? Because you might have a coffee afterwards, but when everyone else is having a coffee, you're probably still in the water training for one of these mammoth swims.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm deep in the training, it's pretty solo. It's pretty on my own. Yeah, you spend a lot of time just like breathing and looking up to the person next to you, but you do create pretty strong bonds just doing that. Like, even if there's not a lot of talking. So yeah, the coffees afterwards are priceless though. But
once you put this out into the world, is there a buzz through that community of Jono's thinking about doing 100K? He's thinking about doing this 100K Great Barrier too. Do you think he's going to be able to do it? Like, does it spread through that community?
Yeah, I think so. Like, everybody's always pretty interested in what anybody else is doing. Like, I hear whispers about what people in like Wellington are doing and Christchurch and like Wanaka and that kind of thing. And yeah, it's cool to follow. Cool to follow everybody's progress. And I think in this case, it transcended a little bit beyond just the marathon swimming community and kind of into the broader open water swimming community. Yeah.
So you decide you're going to do 100K. You set a date, which I'm assuming is to do with tides and things like that. The training program, I'm imagining you're not doing anything close to 100K swims in training. But how many kilometers are you doing per week? How many hours per day are you in the pool in the build up to this?
Well, I had this lovely training program that I'd put together. So I'm self-coached, and I do that based on just research that I gather from other swimmers and their experiences and what they've done. I had this lovely training program that saw me build up gradually to 100K per week for 3 weeks, and then tapering off for 2 to 3 weeks. And that was a build over, I think 6 months or something like that. And was following that to the letter for probably the better part of about 3 or 4 months until I got injured. So that was going perfectly, and a lot of work in the pool, like swimming Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10K per day, and then doing some work in the ocean as well. And yeah, then I got injured. I was out for December and Jan with a shoulder injury. We reset the window, and then from there it was a bit of a mix of gym work and mostly long swims in the ocean, which made up the training. So I had to kind of adapt things a little bit after that injury. And
what's a long swim? What do you consider a long swim in the ocean?
So the plan was for the second part was that I would build up from 3-hour back-to-back swims. So 3 hours on a Saturday, 3 hours on a Sunday, to I think it was ultimately building up to 12-hour back-to-back. It wasn't quite what eventuated, but doing 3 hours back-to-back, 4 hours back-to-back, 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, and then 3 8-hour swims in a row over Easter weekend. And that was across both the pool and ocean at times. So sometimes, like over Easter weekend, for example, I did 8 hours in the pool on Friday, 8 hours in the pool on Saturday, then 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the ocean on the Sunday, and then went back for another 4 hours on the Monday.
Have you got an incredibly understanding employer? Because you've got quite a high...
I was just about to say that.
You've got quite a very good job, and 12 hours in the ocean.
I'm fucked after an hour session in the gym and then having to go to work.
No, but like, how are you fitting it? How are you doing it?
Other things kind of sacrificed as I go through the training journey. So work is, I make sure that doesn't get impacted. And then the things that probably naturally fall off, like social events, not getting as much like rest and recovery. But there's still a lot of hours in the day. You can, if you work a 50-hour week, you can still do a hell of a lot of stuff around that.
I love the eyeballing me as well, and I'm shrinking into my seat, going, yeah, he's right. He's actually right. Like the amount of time I waste scrolling through social media when I could be doing an open ocean swim.
What would be the earliest time that you would start these swims? Is it are you like 2 a.m. in the morning to sort of eat into your morning?
I mean that's over the weekend, right? So I wouldn't do that over
not on a school night.
A weekday.
Not on a school night.
Yeah. So 2 a.m. I think that was the earliest start. I did one swim overnight, like starting in the evening after it was like a Friday. I just finished up work, went home, got my food together, drove out to Takapuna, got my stuff ready, and then started swimming and didn't stop until the next morning.
And we'll talk about the importance of a support crew a little bit later on, but for those training swims, you haven't got a kayak person next to you supporting you on that either. So is it just leave a note, hey Sarah, off on another swim at Takapuna Beach, see you in the morning, and just hope that you come back? Like, flippant aside, but do you have to put checks and balances in place to ensure your safety as well?
Yeah, like I'd tell her, these are the hours that I'm going out for. If I'm not home by this time, you can probably get worried. I'll give you a call, around this time.
Personal locator beacon, have you got one of those on you?
No.
You're in the water?
No. So it's pretty simple when I'm going out and doing those long ocean swims at night. I'm going out with a tow float, which is like a little inflatable kind of balloon in a way. And that has capacity for one bottle in it. And I'd have some liquid feeds in the back of that. And then the rest of my liquid feeds I'd have under my car. So I'd park my car on the Takapuna boat ramp.
Wow.
And then
mate,
I'd have, just swim up and down the beach from 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever it is. Have my drinks, and then once the bottle in my tow float is used up, I'd go back to my car, swap it out, and then get back in the water. So, like a minute or two interchange between. But it just kept it simple. I didn't have to jack up mates to try and join me at silly o'clock in the morning.
Right, because in my rudimentary mind, I'm thinking you're swimming like miles out into the middle of the harbour and then coming back again, but you swim parallel, like a long parallel to the beach. Okay,
you got it.
Okay,
yeah.
I feel safe again for you now.
Okay, so the training's all done. You're all set. You went out on Wednesday morning, right?
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning.
So I was about 8 hours or so into the swim at this point.
Okay, take us to Monday night. So the night before you're starting, what are you thinking about? Are you feeling nervous or excited or anxious, or what's going through your head? Did you sleep much that night?
I can take you probably a few days before then.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the journey, and some of the emotional roller coaster as well was trying to pick a weather window, so or like some dates that we could actually do this thing on, because the wind was howling and we just had these strong northerlies. We still kind of have them at the minute, and while we had pegged this window of April 25th to May 5th, there was no guarantee around getting any kind of calm wind in that period. And so if you can imagine, like, there's been all this media, we've got bloody billboards and done all the training and like really put it out there, and then the weather was totally out of my hands, and just massive levels of anxiety because of that lack of control. And that was probably for about 2 weeks before the swim actually eventuated, because I was checking the wind forecast on, predict wind and windy like 12 times a day.
Yeah, wow.
to try and see, are we going to be able to get a window for this? And we finally, it was kind of becoming clear that on maybe the Friday before, that maybe there would be an opportunity on the Tuesday, Wednesday. We knew that Tuesday would be good, and then Wednesday would be muck. And it was just whether that was something that we'd be able to accept or not. And then, fast forward to Sunday, and I'm sitting lying down on the massage table, having a call with the co-skippers of the boat, and making a decision on whether to actually go ahead or not based on the wind conditions. And they said, it's coming out. Are you comfortable with it, Jono? And I said, yeah, let's go, because it didn't look like there was going to be any other opportunity, and we just kind of had to take it. And from that point, it moved from more anxiety to excitement. Like the emotion switched kind of immediately in that moment, really. And so we activated the crew and headed out the next morning. And going out the next morning, there was still like 3 meter swells and really strong wind, and we're going into it on the boat, and all the swimmers on the boat were just pretty green and like not having such a good time, myself included. The sailors were they were totally fine, but I was like, wow, like this is a pretty big sea state.
So that night before, you did get like a full night's sleep. Did the build up of what was happening affect your sleep the night before? You
No, fortunately not. It was pretty good, actually. Like, I have had that before, where I just haven't been able to sleep. And I was...
Taupo?
Lake Taupo, yeah, that was terrible. Yeah, I got 90 minutes sleep before doing a 40k swim. It's just, good. I think because I had to wake up, like we started the swim at 3:30, so I had to wake up at, 1:30 or something like that for that one.
But do you have like a ritual, like a like team sports, people have I put my left boot on before my right boot, or I listen to this. Do you have a pre-swim ritual that you follow to the letter, or try to follow to the letter, to get you into the zone, or is everything treated differently based on its merits?
Yeah, that's interesting. No, I don't really have anything that's conscious. Maybe there's some unconscious things that I do in the lead up. Yeah.
Stuff that you avoid eating?
Not having too heavy of a meal before. At that point, you're not really going to get any benefit out of having like a big pasta dish or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you take off Tuesday morning.
Yep.
Are there little checkpoints that, like you'll be fine to 10K, you'll be fine to 20K, you've done 40K before. Is it kind of on autopilot in those early stages? Like that's all in control. It's the later part that's going to be challenging?
I try not to think too much about the larger distance, and just really stay in the moment and not, I think, chunking it up, even though in my mind I kind of knew, you know, to Little Barrier is going to be about 20K, and then to Carwell is going to be another, you know, 25K or something like that, and then Tiri's is like 20K to the end. And so I knew these things in the back of my mind, so that was hard to avoid, but it was really trying to stay on autopilot and just stay in the moment as much as I could, so that, you know, the idea of, I've got, you know, 90K to swim, I've done 10K, that's great, but I've got 90K to swim, that's a long way, that wouldn't kind of mess with my head.
And what's the support crew's job? Like, at what points are you ever like stopping and treating water for a bit and eating? Like, does that happen a lot?
Yeah, so we had planned feeds every 40 minutes, and the crew, so there were 16 people on the crew, and 3 shifts across the support boat that was alongside me, and that would always have 1 observer, 1 feeder, and 1 driver. And one of the responsibilities of the feeder or support on that little boat next to me, this 4-meter tender, is to chuck out food every 40 minutes. And most of that was liquid feeds. We did add a little bit of solid in the mix as well. But, you know, during that time, you're just treading water. You're not grabbing onto the boat or doing any of that to abide by the rules.
And did your foot hit something in those early stages that you weren't sure what it was?
Around Little Barrier?
Did my foot hit something?
Or did something hit you?
I remember hitting a stick, and it made me leap a little bit in the dark.
Yeah, that would scare the shit out of me. Like, I'm bad in the water, in the dark, in a swimming pool, let alone in the open ocean.
Yeah.
Like, I know you've done Fovo Strait, and people talk about great white sharks and bits and pieces like that. But is that just like someone gives you a jump scare in the middle of the night? Like, if you bump into something in the ocean like that, is that the kind of scare that it is, or is that like, fuck, there's something here, park it out of your mind? What does that look like?
I think for that one, it was a bit weird, because I wasn't expecting there to be anything, let alone like some driftwood that I was swimming into. If it's seaweed, I think it's kind of par for the course. You expect that, and I don't really get impacted by that at all. I've, you know, swum through jellyfish and that kind of thing, and that, you know, if it happens, it's a bit of a bugger, but it's not like I'm as kind of shocked by it anymore. You know, so I think it has, you know, that sensation has been dulled, like the shock of, oh, you know, something's just touched me. But in this case, I don't know, I totally wasn't expecting it, and it got me.
Take us into the mind, because I mean, this is the part I'm most fascinated about. The mental control of you saying you're not thinking about distances, you're just, I'm guessing, very present. Like, do you have techniques or strategies to repetitively do the same thing for so long?
Yep. So I think first off is that when I'm training, a lot of that is mental training as much as anything else. Like these, you know, 8-hour swims, especially in the pool, it's really about not letting my mind take over and put me in that negative space. And so that gives me a lot of opportunity to develop the tools that I can use for later. And one of the most simple ones is if my brain starts getting into this bad space, or mine, I'll let it run a lot of the time, right? Because it kind of entertains me. Just whatever thoughts come up, you know, I'll let that come through until such a time as it gets negative. And then as soon as it gets negative, I bring it back to the present. And the easiest way to do that is just through counting. And just counting over and over and over again until you get back into that flow state, and then everything's good again. So,
do you count up to a certain number, or do you just keep counting?
Most of the time I just count to 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And you're that confident with these strategies that you knew you were going to be okay?
Yeah, I guess I've used them enough, and, you know, they've served me pretty well so far. I've had enough experience with doing these longer swims that the mental side, Yeah, it wasn't anything that I had any doubts around, I guess.
Do you practice stuff like meditation outside of the
Yes,
water?
I do actually, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, is it a daily habit for you or a daily pillar?
In an ideal world, it
Yeah.
used to be. Like I did it pretty solidly for probably about 7 years or so, and just recently over the last 6 months I've been a bit lazy with it. But yeah, that helps as well.
So that
Like,
ability to let your mind wander and then just bring it back into...
Yeah. And just to be aware of what's going on as well. You know, because a lot of the time if you're not aware, it can take you places that you don't necessarily want to go to, especially over a long period of time.
I'm fascinated as well by those regular breaks. What's the vibe or the atmosphere like in that feeding kind of treading water period? Are people trying to rack you up, keep you calm? Are you looking for support from externals? Is each break different? Is it like a boxing fight where, you know, like
Little pep talk.
yeah, exactly, like
Got
that
this,
sort of
Jono.
yeah, that sort of stuff. Like, is that what it's like?
Depends on the stage.
Right.
You know, like I did ask the crew to give me a little bit more encouragement. And yeah, from there, you know, every time I pop my head up, they're like, great work, you know, and that helps because otherwise I am in my own head.
Yeah.
For a lot of it. Toward the latter stages of the swim, there was some more, I guess, straightforward conversations between me and the crew.
Which way or both ways?
Oh, both ways.
Right.
Yeah. Because I was getting, I guess, a little bit impatient and exhausted, and you know, I unfortunately took some of that out on the crew, and they managed to wrangle me back into a good headspace.
What can you give us an example of that? Like, what do you mean you would take it out on the crew? Would you just give them a bit of attitude?
Yeah.
Why don't you get in the fucking water and do it then?
Got any idea how far I've been swimming?
I think one line in particular, I remember I was like, they were, you know, telling me to do something, and I'm like, I'm buggered. Like, I've been swimming for 30 hours.
It is.
Give me a break, kind of thing. But yeah, I'm quite ashamed that I took some of it out on the crew.
I feel like after 30 plus hours, you've got
Yeah, you've got
some leeway to fire some verbal salvos at some people if they're encouraging for you to get a little bit more. Did I hear right that there was like a hype playlist that was supposed to be played at some point as well, like a curated group of tracks to kind of? Was that for the whole 30 hours, or was that just a little short period of time?
Oh, that playlist was probably like an hour's worth of content, but the intent was that if things got to a bad place, that you could use those. I used those songs when I was training in the gym, for example, and there was like quite a mental cue that was associated with them.
Love that.
Yeah, and so over time I managed to build up like a really positive emotion with these songs, but I just didn't hear any of it. I think they played them, but.
Can you give us a little taster of what might be on that playlist? Is it a publicly available playlist on Spotify that people can download themselves?
Do a long distance swim with support group?
Yeah, what's on it? There's okay. This might surprise people. There's this song by 30 Seconds to Mars, if you know the band.
Yeah.
And it was the same song that I listened to when I left the country for Canada. I was moving overseas for a short period of time, for 6 months, and I played that in the plane and was like bawling my eyes out. And so I had this really kind of positive association with that song, and that was one that, you know, when things got tough, when I was doing like a really hard gym workout, or I was blasting myself on the stationary bike or something like that, that would really, you know, pick me up.
I fucking love that. I love that you've attached memories and moments to those songs. It's awesome. What else you got on there?
Bit of Justin Timberlake, Cry Me a River.
Good. Yeah, good.
Some Flume. A few other kind of pick-me-ups, Rudimental and the like, yeah.
That is such a classic Shay question, and they normally fall flat, but that produced some real gold, so well done on the playlist.
Yeah, but genuinely, is that available? Can people download that?
I'll share it with you later.
Yeah, please do. I'm like, music's my thing. Like, music's my jam. I really like it, as you can possibly tell by my enthusiasm to delve around and pick that up.
The mental, the psychology, whatever it is, of swimming at night, like, is it different? Are you able to stay as in control at night as you are in the day?
yeah, one of my concerns coming into the swim was just from a physical perspective, could I stay awake for the duration? And that was totally fine. From a like psychological perspective, I personally really enjoy swimming at night. It's really peaceful. It's just there's not a lot to distract you from what you're doing. It's really just you and the water, and especially when you're out in the middle of the ocean and you don't have the city lights, the city glow. It's an amazing experience.
It must be an incredible time when you've swum through the night and the sun is rising. Like, is that a really special part of the journey? Yeah,
massive boost, psychological boost to have that. It wasn't like there was this amazing sunrise, unfortunately, because it was more like rain and cloud.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But no, it's definitely a boost, because I think as much as anything I knew, we've got through the night, we've got through a good chunk of the swim now, and now it's business end. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I was going to say, speaking of weather, like it's 3 meter swells and some of the support crew are spewing and feeling dog shit. How different is it for you in the water? Are you also feeling dog shit with being on the rolling waves and stuff like that? Because we gather that some of the medical support were like injecting some of the support crew with like anti-nausea stuff in those swells as well.
I heard about that later, and that kind of amused me, like the imagery of my friends having their pants pulled down and just injected. It's quite funny to me. Meanwhile, in the water, I was fine. Like, I wasn't getting any kind of motion sickness at all.
Right.
Yeah, I think you can just manage it a little bit better when you're in it, and what you're seeing actually matches up with what you're physically experiencing, because when you get motion sickness is where the two don't quite align. And I think that's where it's hard when you're on a boat, for example.
Mm-hmm. Take us to the home strait, maybe 80 kilometers in, where, I don't know, I guess you're starting to feel like you're close. I don't know if you know at all times like how close you are to the finish, but do you remember, again, mentally, I think I've heard you say on some interviews that you were kind of in and out of consciousness. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but you were hypothermic. Like, do you remember it being a real struggle in those last periods?
Yeah, big physical and mental struggle, I think. After, or even before Tiri passage, like it was getting quite difficult mentally. I had hoped to be at a certain point based on the tides, and when I heard that we were outside of the passage and the tide was changing, I knew that we were probably about, 5k or so behind where I'd hoped we would be. Which is a terrible idea. I shouldn't have even mapped it out in the first place, but and I didn't, but I created this expectation in my mind, but that set up a little bit of a negative headspace, and so I carried that forward a little bit through that period. And then as soon as I started seeing landmarks that were familiar to me, so the likes of the Gulf Peninsula and Long Bay, for example, I got a much stronger sense of where I was. And you might think that would actually be like kind of exciting to me because I'm coming close, but I think it had the opposite effect, because I really wanted to get there at that point. And I think if I'd almost closed my eyes, I would have been better off, because I wouldn't have had that relativity to where I was. I think when night eventually came, and we were again behind where I thought we might have been, because we had said 30 to 35 hours, we'll probably finish around then. I said 35, but I was actually in my head, I was thinking 30 hours. I had this rough gauge, like it's been about this period of time. I didn't know exactly, because I didn't want the crew to tell me. I said, don't tell me how far I've gone or time, but I was kind of calculating it in my head. So we'd already passed that time, and mentally that kind of got to me a little bit. And then the conditions started whipping up, and my legs were just bloody sore as anything and like shaking, and they were dragging behind me, and my upper body was like in a pretty bad way as well. And then I start, hallucinating, and so it all kind of came together for those last, I think it was probably the last 3 or so hours where we got really tough, and that's when we actually started looking at, okay, well, can we finish it Narrowneck, which was the original landing point, and then when that got revised, and I didn't quite know that at the time, like I was really just trying to put one arm in front of the other and just keep going, and really trying to stay on task. But it got revised to Takapuna, and they told me, I asked, which was a bit silly, I said, where are we going? They said, just head toward that red light over there. And that was Takapuna, which was like the revised landing point. And it was like just so far away. Yeah. In my head, I calculated it would probably take another 3 or so hours, or there or thereabouts, and to get there across a pretty short distance, but just based on the ebb tide and how I was feeling at the time, and that was super disparaging. But I was getting some really good advice from the crew. One of my good buddies, Mark, he was on the line to Phil Rush, and he said, just take it bay by bay, just chunk it down, like just keep going basically, but don't look at the wider distance.
Was there any part of you at any time that seriously considered packing it in?
Only at the start, funnily enough. Like after,
really?
Yeah, after about 20k or so. It's because I had some really bad gut distress, and I think that was a mixture of the anti-inflammatory pills that I was taking potentially with the food, and I got some pain around then as well, and I thought, if I've got this now, if I'm cramping up now, if I've got gut distress now, it's going to be hard to hold that for the next 80k or so, and had some doubts then, and then at the end I think I was just so out of it. I was just like it was machine-like, Yeah,
you said you had hallucinations.
Yes.
What does that mean? What do you remember them?
Yeah.
What was it?
I had a few in particular that I remember. Like, I think at that stage and I've never experienced hallucinations before, like ever. So it was quite fun for me in a way, but it was also very surprising. And on the support boat next to me, one of my mates was wearing a white puffer jacket, which I found out later. But I was seeing a snowman, so I was turning and I was seeing a snowman. I guess because your brain just equates like the two images to be something similar. And one of my other buddies, Mark, who was on the boat, I saw him in a potato suit.
So what's he up to?
Weird stuff, yes.
Weird time for that, Mark.
Just on the snowman.
Yeah.
Was it the traditional carrot nose and little twig hands on the snowman? Like, did you make out that level of detail?
There was like a twig pointing forward, and that might have been Jamie's arm or something. I have no idea.
I really want to know about the carrot nose, though. Was it or not enough detail on the recollection?
Yeah, I can't remember.
All right.
Yeah.
And then do you snap out of that? You and then you consciously aware that you were just hallucinating, and then you're back.
No, I don't think it's so much that you can control it so much at that stage. They just the hallucinations just happen, and you're like, okay, well, I don't think that's real. But then I kept on seeing stuff.
And you get to the hospital and you're like, hey guys.
Funny question. But
I know this might sound crazy, but why the fuck was that snowman on the support crew for just that little period of time? I don't even know what an hallucination would actually look or feel like. Like, it seems like one of those things that you'd make sense of later on in the piece, but I guess when you're in the middle of it, it's just weird.
Yeah, it's just like, it kind of comes out of nowhere. Like another one that I had was seeing solar panels on the water, and when I saw it, I was like, okay, it's a bit weird, but then it almost kind of made sense because of, you know, maybe ripples on the water or something like that, like just your brain associating like images.
I know you mentioned just before you spoke about you lost, you got a bit angry with your crew at some point. When you're recalibrating and you've got that sense of shit, it's still another 3 or 4 hours, does anger boil up inside you, or do you have to push that down and just, I don't know, to use a boxing term, bite down on the mouth guard and just go for it?
Yeah, I think I was pretty frustrated, you know, and maybe some of that was good energy as long as I channeled it towards the right direction. I really did lean on my crew quite a bit there to give me some good words, because I wasn't getting myself back to that positive headspace. So it was a bloody good thing that they were able to give me some good words and actually be quite firm with me, and that set me right. And then eventually I kind of got out of my own head and just went back to, you know, machine. Yeah,
and the self-control as well, to either not try harder to get there sooner, to slip back into that machine type movements is incredible control as well.
Yeah, I don't think I would have had enough energy to go at a furious pace.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
Okay, so home straight now. Like, how far out did you allow yourself to, like, do you celebrate it before you get to the shore? Do you, is it like a kilometre out? You're like, holy shit, I've done this?
So when the decision was made to go into Campbell's Bay, and that was a safety decision based on the size of the waves, and just basically that there wasn't any suitable landing spot for the next couple of K. I think as soon as that was made in my head, I started not celebrating, but I was starting to get a little bit of that sense of relief at that point. And then I still had a little bit of work to do to get into the beach and get past the waves, get past the breakers, and be able to stand up and walk past the waterline myself unassisted before, you know, the swim was actually marked as complete. So yeah, I don't think there was like a pre-celebration of any kind. And again, I was out of it, you know, it's just super dazed and yeah.
Does it feel weird having the earth underneath your feet again after so long?
Oh yeah. I mean, if you guys have seen the video of me exiting the water, like, your legs are all over the place.
Yeah,
like a big night out, eh?
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, there are certain like rules for this to be considered a record, right? Like, not allowed to touch the boat. No one can assist you. I'm making that one up, but what you've got to walk past the water line once you touch down on the beach. Are there any examples of people that have gone for these record attempting swims and they've done like a huge distance like that, but then they haven't been able to actually walk past the line?
They've done the old Craig Barrett, for those that can remember the Commonwealth Games, where he just could not physically do it.
Yeah.
He was a walker that was miles out ahead and then just so close to the end, just done.
Wow.
Absolutely done.
Yeah, there's no examples that come to mind.
No. So you weren't worried about the walking part after your legs have been sort of numb for so long?
I didn't really think about it until it was happening, and then it seemed okay. My backup was to crawl out, but didn't have to.
How far is that? How far is that from the waterline to where you actually need to get to? Is there a standard distance? And then if like the tide's out, you're like, I've got to go further now.
It's just basically where the water comes up to, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then, so you walk out. And how many people are there?
At this point, they're...
Snowman, Mr. Potato Head, and about 50 other people.
There might have been on the beach, like, again, memory at this point probably not so great, but maybe 10 or so people. I heard afterwards that there were a lot of people that were expecting it to be at Takapuna.
Yeah.
And so people were lining up to see me in there, or even the more optimistic types at narrow neck. So there weren't too many people there. Some people were following in their cars, going from bay to bay, kind of just following the red lights on the IRB, which was out to sea, and using that to mark where to go. So my buddy Aaron, who took that video, he was one of those. But within a pretty short space of time, this was after I got in the ambulance, there were a bunch of people there. I didn't get to see them, but yeah, just like I saw some of the images afterwards. It was insane.
It's got to be a surreal time. I'm assuming these other long distance swims, you weren't in as bad a state at the end. Like, was this a lot worse than those other ones?
Yeah, like I've definitely felt physically in quite a bit of pain at the end of other long distance swims. Taupo, I lost my legs at the end of that one, but still managed to kind of eat my Vegemite sandwich at the end of it and not go into a hospital. And Cook Strait, I had some really bad kidney pain and pissed blood back later. But again, I wasn't in hospital or anything like that. So it was kind of next level in terms of the physical sensations.
And how long after you finish are you able to appreciate what you've done? Is it when you're in hospital with the sort of IV drip all linked up, or was it straight away?
In the ambulance, I did get a real sense of pride, of just what we had done. Pride for both my efforts and the crew's efforts. I was there with Ivan, Marcel, who were part of the crew, and my wife Sarah, and they were asking, what are your thoughts, or something to that effect, and I was really proud. It's hard to say that I was feeling anything else. Well, obviously physical pain, but yeah.
We've done a 96-hour fast in the past, and coming back to eating solid foods is like a gradual process. Is that the same for you post-event? Like, how soon are you noshing down on solid food afterwards? And second part to the question, have you got a go-to meal after you've done one of these long swims? You mentioned Vegemite sandwich a second ago, but is that like, have you got a little, I'm out to burger fuel or something? Really enjoy it.
This time it was, and it has been quite hard coming back because there was just so much salt water that passed through my mouth through the course of that 33 odd hours. And my throat was super raw. Like I really struggled to eat anything. And my tongue, that's been really interesting. Like it's completely lost its top layer and it's just regenerated. So it's been painful for me to eat for probably the last 4 days or so, since exiting. It's only coming right now. But straight away in the hospital, I was just chowing down yogurt because that was about all that I could eat without it being that painful. And if I had my own way, it would be pizza all the way. It's the best kind of after swim treat, I think.
That's still coming. The pizza.
I had some Sal's pizza afterwards.
Oh, there you go.
A few days afterwards.
Buffalo chicken. Just for the swim nerds, is your technique perfect? I mean, I'm assuming that over the long distance, any little abnormality in your technique is just going to get found out. So are you just is your form on point? And you don't really kick much in these long distance swims, right? It's just all arms and upper body?
My technique is definitely not perfect. If you look at a nice pool swimmer, they've got amazing technique, right? They just move through the water effortlessly. But it's very different when you're doing, say, like a 400-meter freestyle event versus, 100K swim. You do apply a different technique, and some of that is wanting to put less pressure on your joints and have something that can be sustainable for a long period of time. So I've got a very, a unique style. I don't think it's a bad technique by any means. If you look at it, it's relatively pleasant to watch. Doesn't look completely like I'm flailing. I did get found out somewhat technically. So, you can see I'm wearing this wrist brace at the minute on my right wrist. And the reason for that is because my pinky goes up probably 3 centimeters or so each time I take a stroke on my right hand. and you do that 50,000 times, and yeah, it's painful.
Yeah.
So that's a technical deficiency that I'm really working on.
How would you go?
But the kicking thing,
The kicking, yeah.
you just do little kicks, right, just to keep you afloat?
Yeah, just a 2-beat kick. So every stroke has a kick that accompanies it. And the reason for that is so that you sit better on top of the water and that you're minimizing your drag, basically. I don't get a lot of power out of my kick, or I try not to put too much effort into my kick because I find I get better purchase out of my upper body.
My question was going to be, how would you go in like a long distance pool competition? Would you go okay? Like, does this your style of swimming translate into like national pool swimming champs?
What's
Like
the
a
longest
1,500 meter
Yeah.
kind of distance? No, I'm fast-ish, but I'm not like competitive pool swimming fast.
Yeah, it's again rudimentary novice understanding, thinking like, yeah, this guy must be able to kick some ass in those long distance pool swims, but I guess they're very, very different.
I do all right in the like ocean swim events, and typically place pretty well in those. That's a little bit different again because it's almost like a sprint, even if it's 3K. Very different kind of energy system that you're using over that time, where it's more anaerobic versus over 100K swim. It's super aerobic. You know, you don't ever want to get past that aerobic threshold because the build up of that lactate over that period of time would just be debilitating.
It's mind blowing.
That's been so captivating.
Yeah.
Like, that's so thank you for coming on and sharing with us. But when you achieve something like that, there's a bigger purpose at place, and I want you to talk a little bit about the why, because this is driving you too, right? The live ocean stuff. So can you tell us like why the Hauraki Gulf is in such a bad way, and why it was so important for you to do this in that name?
Yeah. So the Hauraki Gulf, I've got a really strong connection to. You know, I've been born and raised in Auckland and spent a lot of time both growing up and more recently in the Hauraki, swimming up and down the coast and around the islands. And I've been able to have some like really special experiences out in the Hauraki. And that's been amazing. But I think what I've seen over time, and particularly so as I've spent more time swimming, is that the difference between like a healthy ocean, which I've seen in other parts of the country, and what I'm seeing in the Hauraki is just really obvious now. And that's my experience based on what I'm seeing, but it's backed up by a lot of research, what the scientists are saying as well. So, you know, some of the things that I've seen in which there's research behind. So kinna barrens, we've just had a massive increase in kinna taking over kelp forests because they don't really have the functional predators in the ecosystem anymore that they previously did have. And so that has like a cascading effect to all of the other marine life that relies on kelp forests as well. We've got massive increase in sediment in the water because we're just pumping stuff out off land into the Hauraki. It's like a disposal system in a way. Fish stocks have decreased massively. There's a few other ones, but I think those are the main ones that kind of I've seen myself and experienced myself. And so as an ocean swimmer, as an ocean lover, somebody who spends a lot of time in the water, in seeing this, I did really want to do something myself and felt like I could contribute towards it to add my voice, however big or small that was, to bring people into that story, to make people aware of it, because a lot of people aren't aware of it. And it's only really by dint of me being in the ocean and having spent that amount of time in there that I've really got an appreciation for it. And so that really motivated me to just want to drive or see what I could do to drive some positive action, you know.
You've done a fantastic job of bringing awareness to this. What can people do? Someone listening to this, what can they do to help?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because it can feel like it's a lot of the power that's actually going to drive the action is centralized in our government. So for the average person, it's something that, they might feel a bit powerless to in a sense. But the biggest thing that I think I'd ask is that you remain aware of it. You talk to your local MP about it. You raise your voice in whatever way you can, and you share the message, because the more people that share the message, the more collective voice we can raise, the harder it is to ignore. With any kind of change that's been brought about by the people, it's when it becomes that. It's when it's something that can't be ignored anymore.
I think I saw an Instagram post today that you were heading to Parliament or going to Parliament. Have I got that right?
Next step, the Beehive was the LinkedIn sign
Beehive.
off.
Yeah.
It was a kind of aspirational, that's what we're pushing for, to try and drive some action, and actually take the next step, which is having those conversations with the people that can make the decisions. Yeah.
Can I loop back to one of those positive experiences that you've had in the ocean? And that was some amazing footage I saw of you swimming with a manta ray. Was that a particularly, I don't want to put words in your mouth, like a spiritual or just how did that come about? And two, how amazing was that? Because it looked phenomenal.
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. How did it come about? We set out on a bit of an expedition with Manta Watch New Zealand, who have been surveying mantas around, oceanic manta rays around the Hauraki Gulf, and went out with Live Ocean with the purpose of trying to sight one of these things. And we managed to find one off Little Barrier, and then after a briefing had an opportunity to jump in the water and swim with it as well. They're amazing creatures. I was able to approach that one and kind of almost get an eyesight of it, and just make a connection with it. And then we swam for about 10 minutes or so, just me and this manta ray, which is totally a spiritual experience.
Because I feel like for me, that visual representation was the one that struck a chord most, because you can see, seeing marine life in its natural environment cohabitating with humans, and thinking that if nothing's done, that may be lost, is the part I think that had a lot of power for me personally. It really resonated with me. It's amazing. I suggest anyone go and watch it, because it was a particularly kind of, even just to watch it was moving. I can't imagine what it'd be like to be in the water with it as well. It would just be phenomenal.
I'd love for everybody to have an experience like that, so that they'd be more motivated to want to keep that, because it is really special. That's one experience that I don't think I'll forget for the rest of my life. It's amazing, and you do really get a sense that we're not the only inhabitants on this planet, and we forget that sometimes.
Yeah, nice. I just want to. We're not done yet, but I just want to say, well done. It's such an important, powerful message, and to have swum 100K to get it out there, it's just perfect mapping out. But look, Shay's been doing the mahi on this one this week, and he has been in touch with Mrs. Ridler. Shay?
Yeah, one of the things we do is to try and build a picture of who you are as a person. Now, on this episode, we couldn't go past the feats that you've just achieved, but to try and contextualize it, I did pick up the phone and speak to Sarah to try and get a picture of what you were like outside of swimming. And she initially said there is no Jono outside of swimming, which I don't know whether you can agree or disagree, but I'm going to try and paraphrase or stick to script as closely as I can to some of the things that she said about you, and I'd be interested in your take on them. So here we go. Jono is very, very single-minded and full of tenacity and drive. It was a superhuman effort to be able to focus so tightly on these big goals while working full-time with a pregnant wife. It would be easy to let things slide. An example of his single-mindedness, at uni, I would go over to hang out and he would finish his assignments before he would spend time with me. On our wedding day, he still managed to do a naked 3-kilometre swim in Devonport to defend his title in the morning and then boost out to the ceremony in Pihar afterwards. He's very good at breaking down tasks. His favourite saying is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, which is how he approaches his swims. One stroke at a time from one checkpoint to the next. And when I spoke about, I guess, the messaging or things to come out of the swim, this is what she said. The choices we make manifest our personal limitations. You decide what your limits are. For him, he doesn't want to be ordinary, so it's a deliberate choice to push himself and to be better at everything that he does. Now, do those kind of statements all reign reasonably true?
Yeah, particularly so the naked swim. Thanks for bringing that up.
I actually asked her for clarification. I said, is that like just a turn of phrase, or is it genuinely a naked swim?
There's something called a freedom swim that takes place every year around North Ed. And yes, I may have done that on the morning of our wedding day.
Was that just coincidence that particular swim was done on that morning, or?
Yes, yeah, complete coincidence. Yeah.
And full nude?
Full nudie, yeah. There's a freedom category, and you get into the water, take your togs off, put them on a boat. The boat meets you at the other side. Yeah, so you don't walk out of the water.
Well, that was what I was thinking.
Yes.
Is you go in and out full nude, but no, your modesty is maintained in the water.
Everything else, though, that was quite powerful, especially what she said at the end there. I can't remember exactly what you said, but I know it struck a chord. Just the thing about the limitations, like...
Yeah, that you set for yourself and not wanting to be ordinary.
I don't think it's so much about not wanting to be ordinary. It's not wanting to be less than I can be. You know, ordinary is like I think that's like a relative term, right? If you say somebody's ordinary or extraordinary, you're always comparing it to somebody else. Whereas for me, it's just not wanting to be mediocre in terms of my own standards and what I can achieve. And so these swims is a way of expressing that, and it's kind of the highest expression of myself, like being able to understand what my physical and mental capabilities are. There is a me outside of swimming, but she probably hasn't seen it recently, to be fair.
It's a phenomenal mindset that you have, and an incredible one as well, to think that this isn't your full-time profession. Like, you're dedicating a fuck ton of time towards this, but you're also holding down a 9-to-5. You're also going to be an expectant father you are an expectant father. Is any of the routine going to change when that fatherhood, you can take some tips from Stephen here, father of 3, soon to be 4, on how that's going to impact on your potential time that you can spend swimming?
Yeah, no more 100k swims.
No, I don't know. I think that solitude, you might appreciate that solitude in the water that provides.
Yeah, it'll be a big change for sure. I don't exactly know what it's going to do to the scheduling, but yeah, we'll work through that.
Was there ever a moment when you went, no, this is what I am, this is that pushing the boundaries and pushing your limits? Was there ever was there a salient moment where you went, yeah, that's what I'm going to do, or or has it been something that's just grown in you over time?
It has been pretty gradual, really. But I do remember a specific moment after Cook Strait. You know, I'd been building up to that swim for so long, and it was kind of the first of the epics that I had done, and had some battles along the way, and when I eventually touched the rock off the South Island, I did really get a sense, maybe not immediately, but afterwards, in reflecting, that, you know, I could, if I put my mind to something, I really could achieve it. And I think that was a big turning point for me. Yeah.
That Cook Strait swim seemed to have a little bit of adventure about it, right?
Yes.
You get chased by a seal at the start of it?
Yeah.
And was that the one where your wife threw up overboard and you swum through it? I got those lined up?
That might have been correct, yeah.
Is she much of a seagoer?
She's joined me on a few of these swims. She doesn't spend a lot of time in the ocean herself, like not a lot of time, you know, swimming around in the ocean or doing anything like that. She spent a little bit of time like on and around the ocean growing up. I mean, we kind of all do around Auckland, don't we? But not to the same extent that I do, I guess.
Where did you keep the ring on your person after you? Because for those that don't know, you proposed to Sarah on the sand of Lake Taupo after completing that swim. Did you have the ring on your person the entire swim?
No. So the ruse was my dad was there for that swim. He doesn't like boats. So he stayed off the boat. He gets a little bit seasick, and he was there at the start. And so I said, Dad, just quickly come over here. I said, I'm going to propose to Sarah tomorrow. I'm going to put it in the pocket of my swim jacket. I want you to put the swim jacket over me at the end, and then I'll be able to take it out from there. And so that's what he did. He put the jacket around me at the end, and then, probably 15 minutes after getting out of the water.
Yeah, I was going to say, was that top of mind when you get out? Like, oh shit, that's right, I've got to propose when I get out of
something
here.
I had to do. Yeah.
Gave me a bit more courage, I guess, having done that swim beforehand. Proposing's a bit daunting.
In comparison? Shit. Has anyone ever said that you've got a bit of Ryan Reynolds about you, by the way?
No. Okay. Thank you, though.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm staring down the barrel. I'm like, yeah, there's a decent Ryan Reynolds impression in here somewhere.
I'm not sure I see it.
You need to get a better angle.
I'm on a swim journey at the moment. So I used to run a lot, and I've been injured a couple of years ago. Can't run anymore. Arthritis in the hips. So I started swimming, and I hated it to start with, but it was something that I knew for the long term. If I needed a cardio workout, it was either cycling or swimming. I chose swimming, and I've learned to love it. So I get in the pool 3 or 4 times a week, and I just don't do as long as you, but I've found that I've really sort of enjoyed the space where I'm unplugged from everything and I'm just alone with my thoughts, just doing length after length. Like, there's something really cool about that. But was it similar to you? Like, you played football at youth and you did a lot of running, and then I understand you got an injury. Is that how you found your way into the pool?
I think I found my way into the pool through training for ocean swimming. Like, it wasn't so much that I was doing it like what you're describing, which is where you're pulled into the pool swimming for its kind of meditative benefits as much as anything else. Well, at least that's what it sounds like based on what you're saying. But the pool swimming for me has always been complementary to ocean swim training. So it's something that I've needed to do. I do enjoy it. Like, I do genuinely enjoy it. Like, doing pace swimming and pushing my body in that sense. But it wasn't like I got into pool swimming and then really enjoyed that, and then got into ocean swimming off the back of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Well, was it swimming in general as part of rehab for you in terms of injuries?
Yeah, it was.
Was it that was that a low impact solution to some of the injuries that you'd suffered?
Correct. Yeah.
Through your kind of various sporting endeavours.
From a snowboarding injury in particular was what got me doing a bit more pool swimming, and then off the back of that, training for an ocean swim. So I do a hell of a lot of pool swimming, and I do actually have a bit of an appreciation for it now as well. Like what you're talking about in terms of just getting into that zone, and you're just in your own space for however long you want to be anyway. Yeah. It's quite a nice space to be in. For some people, it drives them bloody crazy because they're up in their own head for too long. But if you've got a particular leaning, I think it's a really enjoyable space to be in.
Yeah, I've really connected with it in a way that I didn't think that side of it would appeal. I just thought I'd get a good workout out of it. But yeah, I think there's so much going on in life and so much screen time that is a time where
absolutely
there's no way of screen time.
Isn't it? Like, particularly so with the screen time, because you don't have a choice. Like, there's no picking up of the phone or anything like that. So can you imagine for 33 hours I didn't look at a phone bloody once, and like how fantastic is that?
Yeah.
What did your phone look like afterwards? How many notifications and messages and well wishes and all the best?
Crazy.
Did it take you a while to clear all that off?
Yes, it did.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
I could
imagine.
Imagine.
Good problem to have, right?
I guess so. Are you still rolling around on the old Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mats as well?
No, I've still got a couple of gis in my wardrobe just in case I do decide to pick it back up again. But no, I dropped that probably 3 years ago or so. Really enjoyed that.
Are there any lessons from those other pastimes and sports that you can apply to your swimming journey, or vice versa?
Oh, 100%. Like, I think, thinking about something like jiu-jitsu or judo, which I did a little bit of, the resilience, the physical and mental resilience to when it gets tough, keep, moving forward, because you're in some situations with jiu-jitsu, maybe somebody's on top of you applying the full pressure of their body weight, and it's an uncomfortable position to be in, and when you first do that, you're like, oh, this isn't nice, I want to get out. But you learn to just be able to sit with that, and I think that that's something that I've definitely carried over to swimming as well, is that kind of sense of, it's uncomfortable, but I can sit with that for a little while.
Speaking of sitting with discomfort, ice baths. I've heard you sit in ice baths for 1 hour plus, like proper ice baths for 1 hour plus. That is a level of discomfort which
Proper ice baths.
Yeah,
some ice baths aren't proper ice baths.
Well, like some people go, yeah, I'm in an ice bath, but that's not an ice bath. Like you're fully submerged for 1 hour plus, right?
Yeah, that's kind of my PB. 1 hour at 3 degrees. More recently, it was getting up to about half an hour at 1 degree in a little modified chest freezer that I've got.
Yeah, great tips, by the way. Check out Jono's website on how to make your own home ice bath out of a chest freezer. Very, very good instructions, very detailed.
Man's been deep in the trenches.
Yeah, no, and you write as well. You write so eloquently. Like your journal of your experiences, your blogs, is really, really detailed and really, really good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Get on that ice freezer.
Is the ice bath thing, was that in preparation for the long swim? Like, is it to get used to being in cold water for so long?
Like I first bought it for Strait in the lead up to that, and I had seen, I don't even know where I saw the whole chest freezer ice bath thing. I think it was on YouTube or something like that, and I was inspired to give it a crack. There wasn't really a lot of, at least that I knew of, there weren't a lot of people that were doing that at the time, and so I bought it and modified it and went through a bit of a learning journey to do that. Hence why I wrote that blog, so people don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. And I was sitting in that at something like, 7 degrees for long periods of time, just to try build up my cold water adaptation, because that was something that I was a little bit worried about. The water up in Auckland was like 21 degrees, and I was going into 14, 15 degree water in Strait, and so how my body would respond to the cold water was something that I was a little bit definitely conscious of, and that I needed to do some work around.
Yeah. That seems like a long time, an hour. It's
a fucking long time.
It is a pretty long time. I wouldn't recommend it to most people. And the only reason I do it for that period of time is purely for the cold adaptation.
Yeah.
It's not for health benefits. Like,
yeah.
You get out after, like, say, recent experiences, 30 minutes at 1 degree, and like you have a wicked after drop. And the after drop is when the cold blood from your extremities starts pouring back through your core and then circulating out. And so you have this drop in temperature after you get out of the ice bath, and you're just like shaking like a madman. And yes, it's not that pleasant, but I think it's helpful.
Are you a Wim Hof guy?
I do a little bit of, maybe not specifically Wim Hof breathing, but do some breathing exercises.
Did you get intrigued when that sort of blew up? Are you all in on kind of wanting to learn more and wanting to research more?
Yeah, I've watched quite a bit of Wim Hof stuff. Like, the guy just fascinates me. He's an interesting fella and super passionate.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Have ice baths been part of your recovery since the swim? Like, have you been doing them in the last few days?
Not yet. No, I haven't gone back in the ice since, actually. Not a bad idea to.
I get in there tonight after the pod.
There's such a thing as ice swimming, right?
Yes, there is. Yeah,
which is a 5-degree water temperature.
less than 5 degrees.
And is that like pool lengths? Is that classified as ice? Is there an ice swimming championships? Again, novice
Yes.
intelligence.
My guy's been doing the mahi on the swimming.
Yeah, I mean,
I think we're getting you in the pool. Are we turning you into a swimmer, Shay?
I don't actually know how to swim, so it's going to be a challenge in itself. But
I reckon we're lining up a few lessons down
Yeah,
the Gallagher Aquatic Centre in
maybe.
Hamilton. Shout out.
yeah, maybe. But there is, like, are you a president of the association, the ice
Secretary
swimming,
at the
secretary of the ice swimming association?
Of the International Ice Swimming Association, Aotearoa in New Zealand,
Excellent.
which we set up over the last couple of years. And so, pretty new thing. The International Ice Swimming Association came out of South Africa, and it's bigger than you might expect.
Yeah, I'm genuinely interested by it.
Yeah,
Like, are the world champs that you can qualify
there's
for
world
and move
champs.
forward?
Yeah. There was just earlier this year. There was the first New Zealand team that went up to the world champs up in France. It's definitely still a very young sport, but the aspiration is to get it into the Winter Olympics.
Makes sense. There's no other swimming.
Yeah.
Another avenue for our top swimmers. And is there a crossover between like hot water swimmers and ice swimmers?
Hot water
I don't know. Fucking normal swimmers and ice swimmers. Like, is it the same group of athletes that cross over both, or can you specialize in ice swimming?
Yeah, you could definitely specialize in ice swimming. The top ice swimmers around the world are pool swimmers, but they're guys and gals that are coming out of these colder countries, so they kind of they're getting that cold exposure. I think for most of our elite pool swimmers, they really struggle getting into 3-degree water, whereas they're training most of the time in 26 to 28 degrees. The challenge isn't how fast you swim, it's how do you navigate those colder temperatures. How can your body deal with that for that period of time? And you if you chucked like a really good pool swimmer into that kind of environment, I think they would struggle because they've got pretty limited body fat and those kind of things, which helps.
Yeah, maybe I am a go for ice swimming.
You'd be a hot pool swimmer.
Definitely not. I'll be an ice guy.
Look, not much more from me. I imagine the answer to this is just chilling out for a bit, but are there any things on the horizon that you're working towards?
No, nothing actively at the minute. And yeah, you're not the first person to ask what's next.
What's next? Yeah.
No, that there's like a little seed of an idea that's in my head, and we'll see what happens with that. But like we talked about earlier, I'm going to be a dad in a few months, and I'm sure that's going to consume a bit of my time.
It will be the next big adventure.
You know how there's great walks in New Zealand? Are there like great swims around the world that you can tick off as well? Like, is that a well-known thing? And what are examples of ones that are on that list?
There's the Ocean 7, which
Okay.
is popularized for probably the best part of a decade now, and that's made up of 7 kind of gnarly swims or big swims around the world. You've got the likes of Cook Strait, which is on that, so that sees a lot of that sees a lot of international travelers coming to New Zealand to do that swim. English Channel, which most people know about, between France and England. The North Channel between Ireland and Scotland. Molokai Channel, which is in Hawaii. Gibraltar Strait and Tsugaru Strait up in Japan, and then the last one is Catalina Channel, which is Catalina Island back to the mainland off the coast of California.
Now, so you're one of 10 that's done the New Zealand Triple Crown.
Yeah.
How many people have done the Great 7?
I think maybe 50-ish. Yeah. There's there's some amazing marathon swimmers around the world.
Yeah, where do you rank in terms of, like, is it are you able to
is
rank
there a ranking?
where you are?
No, it is really hard to say like this person is better than this person, and because every day is different and every swim's a little bit different. And how do you measure things? Is it based on distance? Is it based on time? There's kind of like there's a few people out there that are really pushing the boundaries and that inspire me, and they're kind of more well known in the swimming community as well.
Yeah, who has the world record longest ocean swim?
Longest ocean swim is I think it's Neil Adjuce, who's a guy out of Malta, and that's 125.7 Ks. He's currently aiming to do 100 miles.
Wow.
in about a month.
We had Ruth Croft on from a running perspective, who's done some incredible things. Where do you do a swim like that? Like, how do you? Fuck.
Up in the Mediterranean,
right?
This guy's doing it. So, which I think that's a good place to do it because it looks like the waters are generally a little bit calmer and quite warm as well. You know, so you can kind of take hypothermia out of the mix. But 160k, like, it's unreal, and he's expecting it to take 70 hours. Like, I've just done half of that. So, you know, I look at guys like that and I'm like, okay, like, if this guy can do this, I reckon I can do a bit more.
Amazing attitude to have.
If you've enjoyed this chat, go and listen to Chloe McCardell. She was our ultra marathon swimmer we had on. I think she did it 100. She did over 100 kilometers. I should know this.
We should know this.
But it was in that same area.
She did. Yeah, that's right.
130 maybe.
Yeah, that's right. No, that was in the Bahamas. Wasn't it?
She got pipped by Neil. Her record recently got broken, and I think it was up in the Bahamas, about 120k or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And there's something about warm water versus cold water swimming, and there's all these little kind of really intricacies into validating the attempts, right?
Yeah, like hypothermia versus hyperthermia. So, you know, becoming too hot versus becoming cold as you're swimming. So, for my recent swim, it was more hypothermia because the water was cool, but some of these other swimmers, these guys are taking down drinks with like ice cubes in them because you know, they're getting too hot in a way. And then the verification, massive amount of like documentation that you need to put forward to the governing body to make sure that everything was done according to the book, and that can take months to actually get it verified.
Have you done any swims overseas? Any really long? I mean, obviously you've swum overseas.
No, not yet. No, I'm booked to do North Channel next year though. The one between Ireland and Scotland.
Oh, right. So you do have a 2024 long swim in motion.
Cat's out of the bag.
It's a bit of a weird one, but your job in logistics we can shout out DHL, right?
Sure.
Does that help you in terms of like planning for these things? I mentioned right at the top, like you must have a meticulous plan in terms of how everything's going to fit and how everything's going to go, because it's not a case of just, I'm going to jump in the water at point A and I'm going to get out at point B. You 16 are going to come along for the ride and happy days. how much detail goes into it?
Oh, massive.
Yeah, because you've got the training amount, but you've also got the logistics and everything to map out. And is that all you that does that? Is there a program coordinator or someone in over the top who oversees everything? Or are you captain?
I was
coach?
doing a good amount of it, and then Live Ocean really came to the party and put a little bit more professionalism around it. Like, there was a health and safety plan that was like 20 pages long, you know, that sat behind this, and the whole event plan. And luckily, there was somebody that was actually able to add some structure in the last few weeks in terms of that event management. But yeah, I think in terms of the logistical piece, definitely there's some crossovers between what I do professionally and what I do as a hobby, and probably more so from a resilience perspective, you know, like crossovers there in terms of just dealing with some of the stuff that I have to do in the workplace, and then transferring that over into swimming and vice versa as well.
What's the biggest lesson that swimming has taught you?
Wow. I think that the biggest lesson that doing these big swims has taught me really is that you're totally the master of your own destiny, and that you go as far as you want to go. You know, so you're only really limited by your imagination and by your belief and by your hard work and dedication. I think that would be the biggest lesson.
It's been a really insightful and inspirational episode. I just want to say I'm going to tee up Shay. He's our outro guy. But I love that you have created this challenge for yourself out of nowhere. No one was on no one else's radar, but you've just made up this thing. I want to swim 100 kilometers, and then you've trained for it. Everyone, well, most people would think it's impossible. It seems impossible, and you've done it, and you've sort of pushed through all of these barriers, and you've come up with the mental fortitude to push through, and in the process captured the nation's attention and pushed up this very worthy cause. Like it's just such a great story, and it's been so captivating. So thank you for coming on and sharing with us. But
I don't think I can. I'm not sure I can top that outro. I'm going to try my best. But Stephen's right, and hearing the measured nature of your approach to things, I think is I've been really impressed by it in the research for it. I mentioned to your wife how articulate you are, and how composed and well-spoken you are. And I think it's lessons learnt from hours and hours of dedication in swimming. You're not rushed in your thoughts. You've got a plan, and you execute that plan in terms of the long swims that you do. And to Stephen's point, single-handedly, essentially, yes, you've had support, but to bring this cause into the consciousness of the nation is an incredible achievement and testament to what people can do as individuals if they don't put those limitations on themselves. And the power that a voice can have when it brings other people along for the journey, I think, is a really, really important lesson from this. I'd love to see hearing the determination behind the challenge to push yourself further. I can't wait to see what challenges are in store for you. I know you've got a massive challenge in terms of adapting to fatherhood coming up, so I wish you all the best for that journey, but I look forward to seeing what amazing experiences you can bring forward in the future.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. It's it's been great to talk, and hopefully this does provide some value for people as well. You know, something that they can take away and in some way impacts them, inspires them in whatever small way.
I'm sure they will. Cheers, Jono.
Cheers.